Good evening, everyone. I'm David Sproles, the president of the New York School of Interior Design, and I am pleased to welcome you all to tonight's Sally Henderson Lecture on Green Design. This annual lecture honors the memory of former faculty member Sally Henderson. Sally was much loved by students and her peers alike. We remember her for introducing both NYSED student and faculty to the importance of sustainable design. Well over 25 years ago, Sally developed the college's first course in green design. Today, sustainable design is a given in our curriculum. And those who want to make it central to their professional careers pursue our Master of Professional Studies in Sustainable Interior Environments. And this evening, I am pleased, sorry, I'm losing my space here. This year, we are very fortunate to have the esteemed international architect, Yatin Pandya, presenting the Sally Henderson Lecture. Yatin was first introduced to the NYSED community when he hosted a NYSED study abroad group in India last year. His work in sustainability made a lasting impression on both NYSED faculty and students. As principal of the architectural practice Footprints Earth, Yatin's work focuses on city planning, urban design, mass housing, architecture, interior design, product design, as well as conservation projects. Regardless of the type of project, his work reflects his commitment to sustainability, socio-cultural appropriateness, timeless aesthetics, and affordability. Yatin has won over 40 national and international awards, participated in over 30 documentaries on architecture, written hundreds of articles, as well as several books, which have been widely used as course material internationally. A graduate of CEPT University in Ahmedabad and McGill in Montreal, Yatin has taught at CEPT for almost 35 years. He has served as thesis advisor to over 200 graduates, master's, and PhD students, further ensuring a far-reaching legacy. This evening, Yatin will be talking about the overarching principle of his work, titled, for his work, Inspire from Yesterday and Aspire for Tomorrow, and his belief that design can empower and improve the quality of life of place, people, as well as planet. Drawing from the ideas presented in his book titled Concepts of Space in Traditional Indian Architecture, he will give us his perspective on what it means to experientially engage with an architecture that decodes the timeless quality of traditional architecture. And now for him, socio-cultural appropriateness in design is realized through participatory processes. Yatin, the microphone is all yours, and I want to remind everybody we have a reception in our gallery space afterwards, so enjoy.
Thank you so very much. Indeed, an honor to be in presence of this august gathering and having been invited. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, NYSID, for making me part of this fraternity. Thank you so much. What I hope to do is to have a little bit of a dialogue by me raising certain kinds of observations. I'm sure you all have been practicing this, knowing this, but I think there's a cross-cultural perspective to exchange here, and I'm trying to put across some perspective that comes from the context that I'm familiar with. Some of these biases or the kind of standpoints are already there in the title, that I think sustainability begins with the way of life, and it has three basic dimensions. So it's not just about the environmental comfort as an idea of sustainability, but I think it should be timeless aesthetics, socio-culturally appropriate, as well as environmentally kind of sustainable. So I think it's in that light. What I begin with is, I think, just reminding ourselves of the pandemic, but pandemic to be taken in a little learning and positive way, that we have been referring to time zone as from BC and AD. I think there has been a paradigm shift into our thinking, and maybe it's a good time to probably change that nomenclature to before Corona and after Corona, because I think it did teach us these values of humility, frugality, sustainability, etc. All these ETs have probably been better understood. So I think it has rested some of those debates about many things in terms of coming back to that any sustained or fundamental developed existence is about two sustenances. human to human and human to nature symbiosis. So I think any development, if we finally base it onto these equations, it would never be out of sync. And in the context of India, I can say, I'm sure the rest of the world would have vouched the same, that we kind of gave up hope on that this have been too many people on this planet and there is irreversible aspect of bringing the balance back. But I think just 2 months of undue system gotten out of the sync, already nature could correct itself. Delhi, we always hear about the pollution, etc. But I think this is the evidence of the pictures and the kind of way it blurred the distinction between the nature and human very well. And I think to remind ourselves, therefore, and I say that kind of debate that it rested is that technology can be a great tool, but I think nature and the one that we can sustain with all the time. So indoors versus outdoors, nature versus technique and all that. In the context of India, I'm reflecting here that we had been after, it's a developing country, wants to progress, and it coined this term smart cities, which I think no dictionary would say smart in any other meaning of what being smart is about. But I think if this happens to be the kind of imagery or a cover page of the program, then it raises a question, is it really a slogan or really it sustains the vision? So there are a lot of these questions that if that is the smart, then what really should be the path ahead, or is it really a question to be going forward in that direction? We have been building like this, and we don't have time to play a quiz here that if we can guess 5 of these answers correctly, I think I donate my book to that person. I'm still open to that. But to save the time, this is any alphabet anywhere. I could have just tricked you and put anything anywhere, and it would still just come across the same. Back home, we are no different, as diverse a culture, context, climate, and the outcome is just about the same. So the point is that there is 2 simultaneous pictures that exist. Both of these are contemporary Kerala in our country. Both are Jaipur. Which is appropriate? Which one should we be looking forward to? Which Kolkata should we be promoting, So in that light, I think the line that gets drawn is the difference between image and identity. And I think, again, in Corona, we learned image is what we wanted to project to the rest of the world, or how the world wants to see us, versus identity is our true DNA, what we actually are. So I think we should be looking at that identity, and therefore design must reflect and respond to that. So I have a little tongue-twisting, definition of design. It's not about finding a single answer to single question. It's about asking many questions, finding many answers to each questions, and then picking one answer that answers most questions, So it's about discretion, it's about adding value, and ability to discern between appropriate and inappropriate. It's not about good, bad, ugly. I say it's like a doctor. You go to a doctor to get diagnosed, and what doctor does is what's relevant or appropriate to you. So I think it's that, but appropriate to what? Place, people, and planet. So I think it's in that format if we look at what design is about. So if that's the idea of what holistic design is about, is this really matching up to that? To me, it's too quick, too singular, and too literal that if child is dirtying the attire while crawling around the floor, we don't design the attire like a mop that let him go around and clean the floor. So, maybe shoe is more expensive than yourself, and you have an umbrella for that. Control all, delete all to single stroke. Hot noodles to be needed, but too late for the school. Yes, and as architect, we are not that far different, Thankfully, our reputation precedes further that architects are very creative. So under that banner, we can get by these. I'm sure this is sold and lived in, and number of our imaginative pursuits go on. And then we do PhD to solve these problems. And the point is, design can add value, may it be beauty, satire, humor, concerns for economics, etc., etc. And these are value added, you know. I'm not obsessed with toilets, but I'm just trying to skip on one thread here that there could be value added toilets. Why not feel like Maharaja in that sense, you know? And I love these toilets of the aircrafts, you know, really the first year bubble diagrams that we were asked to make, soap diagrams, most compact, three-dimensionally optimized. And if you were allowed, you could even take shower here and light and whatnot, you know. So the point is that design, how does it add value? For example, left-hand side, switch is a switch is a switch. But, you know, it's kind of done in a way that if you put it on and if it's too long, the ghost makes, rather than a smiley face, a kind of a frowning space that, are you not really done? But in my place, you know, we are actually branded to be very stingy, so it doesn't work. So what we have is every time you want to put on the light, put a coin, and then we become very concerned and romantic. Oh, it's a full moon day, let's not use the electricity, and likewise, you know. And the one below, maybe it's like from England, that you know, peons, so to say. So every time you come, put a hat, and light would come on. When you go, it will come off on its own. And the right top, maybe it's romantic French that whispers, "Can I turn you on?" So products that, you know, by the time, you know, it comes delivered from Amazon at home, it's already gone defunct. Can we not design it for the second life? And that's what we did way back. Heineken beer, which came up with this Wobo world bottle that once you go high in spirits, turn it into a brick in the wall, and wall would go higher with that in spirits. So point is, technology is a tool, and it, as long as it performs for the right function, is not a kind of duality or a kind of opposition. For example, in a desert, if you were to keep the medicine refrigerated using that solar, is a sensible thing to do. So sustainability, coming to that, is basically a contextual adjustments with the least, how do you get the most and appropriate for that. And that's where some of these questions about that left-hand side that you see is like any other laptop, but if I put a green bamboo chip over it and I call it a green laptop. So the question is that, you know, Mr. Wally Broecker, the same scientist that coined the term global warming for the country of the planet, has been doing million-dollar projects about maybe oxygenating the planet. Could natural seeding of plants not do it more effectively? So I think at least for India, we need answers are like this on the right, that children from Africa are very happy to play around this merry-go-round, but in the process, this has been connected down to the lower aquifer, and mechanically it pumps the water or lifts the water up to the overhead tank, and then 24/7 you get it for the rest of the day. So the point is that post-corona, remembering those, what we managed to do, how multiply we use space, etc., can we not relook at our norms and standards of space, standards of way of looking at things in a multiple way? But we borrow things from alien places, and then we end up into this disaster, you know. And again, I mean, for us, aping the West has been the kind of norm, and that's what I'm commenting on. So when you're mindlessly copying from a single source, it's aping, and of course, smartly doing it, adopting. You know, if you copy from one source, it's plagiarism in the context of academics, but smartly copying from 100, you usually get PhD for that. So point is that holistic design has to go through the 6 lenses: timeless aesthetics, socio-cultural appropriateness, environmental sustainability, functional efficiency, economic affordability, as well as structural stability. So when all these 6 lenses have been fulfilled, then it's a complete design. So let me run through the principles that we understand from the architecture of yesteryears, which have even today withstood the test of time, and we like to even pay tickets to go and visit them over and over. One just example, but to understand, not to replicate them by form or the material. This is a stepped well, and again, to me, it comes across as a complete package, that in a hot, dry climate where there's no perennial river, how do you sustain? And that's where there's a first aquifer to which a small hole is dug, and you go to the water. So there are steps leading to water. Now you cut a slice into the earth might cave in. So you have a shoring and strutting, which is what is done through trabeated construction. But now I'm sure a lot of us are faculty here. If it's sort of a student made the diagram like that, we would say, oh, bring some tension, it's too predictable, it's too boring, repetitive. But what we forget is that it's an inclined journey. It's a 5 or 6 story descent with shoring and strutting, but the way it narrates itself, that's where the whole idea of engagement and spatial experiences come in. It's set of encounters that it has set in. So for example, from middle of nowhere, you have 2 outcrop of stones with few steps. And look at this, in irony, that to go down, you're made to climb up. You don't know what's coming further. But the moment you take the first step, the void further is revealed. So it's kind of engagement, curiosity, and the kind of expectation to look for something new. After that, there is no light, there's no cover on top, so it's kind of a focused light, and you are drawn to that. Till that, you don't know still what is coming further. And then at that point, you get a beautiful panoramic view. It's like an invitational hug from the monument. Welcome to my precinct. It tells you I'm so kind of far there, that's my end, but you're not a crow to fly, which means that now the element of architecture called stair comes in play, where you're simultaneously disposed horizontally and vertically. And in that, your points of view constantly keeps changing. So for example, I say like bite of thali, every bite is a unique composition. Similarly here, that first platform, it feels more like you are on a terrace with less spatial enclosure and you have the bright light coming in. You take a first step further down or a platform further down, it feels like a room with diffusion of light, little more extra sense of enclosure. And you still go further down, and now sense of enclosure changes, visual composition changes, intensity of light changes, and if you're perceptive, even the temperature of the skin changes. So every time there is a new experience that comes in, again, like thali, that what combination you combine your food with. So if you walk straight, it was symmetrical composition. If you walked other way around, it was something else. So each one, and being there matters, and each can carry their own experience. And every time you go there with the light and whatnot, it feels different. And only in the end, water is revealed. So water was merely an excuse, but it's the whole essence is in the journey. So it's not the destination, but the way you encounter the kind of meanders or mitigate meanders, etc., is where the real crux of this journey. So it's about sojourn, it's about journey, and you being there to decode what has been encoded is what is important over there. And then all these dualities of sky and water and all, and even the notion. So as I say, how does it kind of fit into the mind, body and soul kind of a nourishment? That we have 2 notions that work with this. One, going to the womb of Mother Earth, and that's where you have these symbols of motherhood by the goddesses, icons coming in there. And the other one is going to the Netherlands. We believe in tripartite division, heaven in the sky, earth in the ground, and below ground water, which is the water world. And those are again depicted by these symbols. So I won't get into the iconography, but the point is it becomes a complete experience. Yes, for this you need cultural familiarity, but the previous encounters were all humanly universal, So the principles we take back for experientially engaging architecture, again for sustained over time, because once we create, buildings tend to last longer than us. So how do we make that as appealing and as kind of experientially engaging? So the first dictum is disparate visual and physical access. You know where you have to go, but sightline need not be the line of movement. So that is with several kind of meanders, nodes and encounters. Therefore, it's a journey of multiple encounters or nodes, which is basically about sequential unfolding. That keeps you engaged, that keeps you curious, and that becomes a dialogue, that you are an equal part to that particular episode. And therefore, movement holds the key. It's not a static point of view. That's what we all know about architecture. It's a kinesthetics, perception while in movement. Every point, your point of view being different, your whole perception and decoding gets different. And that's what, everybody, even Japanese premier holds that thing on top. But the way it would have come about, especially when you work on ground, you can't miss it. I'm not sure if the computer drawings managed to fathom that. But that's not the point. But when you come, you know what this composition in abstract term is about, that it's a dome, prism, and 4 minaret. And after that whole, you're not supposed to walk straight. You know, plan would say it's a symmetrical composition, but there's water which takes you off axis. And as a result, you see this from multiple perspectives, and eventually a reverse stair, and from the similar tunnel then connects you to the minaret. And it's a fantastic recall and narrative saying that, remember, there were 4 minarets. I am one. I'll now take you to Mumtaz, the tomb for which you've been there. So I thought it dissolved those, have as many 100 yards that you have gone before. Again, pandemic taught us that building doesn't change, but nature is constantly changing. And thanks to changing nature, even though we were indoors, but opening of the window made us look for the next day and kept us going all along. So when there is a integration of nature, then the building is always fresh to look at. Nature in terms of light, air, water, vegetation, even people and activity. And then the semiotics, that any object, but with the notion and way it can connect, it can change the meaning. The stone can become a temple and so on and so forth. Then second part, socio-cultural appropriateness. You know, there's a study done in Japan that if these formal executives were relieved of their ties and tuxedo kind of a formal dressing, they would have felt the same level of comfort with couple of degree warmer AC temperatures. So the wrong dressing was the culprit to unduly having to jack up the AC. So in a hot and humid climate, if the people have been bare-chested and only in the loincloth, are they primitive or they are the most appropriately dressed for that context? We knew Gandhi, who could modestly veil himself and change, you know, that's eternal Gandhi. Do we need that, or we want Gandhi to toe a line when it's hot or cool and fashionable to be what it is? All these three are space conditions which are similar in terms of scale, but the one on the extreme left tends to be coming from the vernacular context where you see there is a positive interface between the life and that alley. The same one having been planned as environmental lane in terms of having sewage line and having an improved healthy environment, but is actually creating a degenerated environment for the cultural not understanding. There is a kitchen window over here, and you throw all your muck out of that into this because of the passivity with which that comes about. As against, if you simply made that window into a door, it would have been the most favorite backyard. So that's a small little ways in which that understanding through in design can just transform the wasteful resource. Same thing here, that becomes a very happy street. This happens to be my city, UNESCO World Heritage Site. You can see that house extends into the street and street goes into the, there's a blurred interface versus legally kept open space but no window out onto that, and makes it passive and therefore eventually drenched and abused. Too large a space don't feel connected and therefore remains idle. And it's not the money, it's the mindset. You see on the left hand side, even in a squatter settlement, with just a shade giving tree at the junction of movement with a dignified plinth, becomes a kind of positive public open space. As against on the right, Ballard Estate, and trust me, New York's real estate expensive, even with the conversion of 86 rupee to a dollar, it might match or perhaps be more expensive in some areas. That kind of a space, but you see relegated to nothing. And these are not derelict buildings, these are who is whose corporate houses. But you see a pipe over a window makes one not to relate to anything beyond that. And as a result, the priceless real estate, which actually is a beautiful colonial structure towards the other side like that, has been just wasted. We had answers, and that's why I'm referring to the past in a sense that we don't forget that for no right reason. Don't throw baby with the basket. This is an urban square, early morning, a cow grazing ground. The same in the afternoon is a business district, and same in the evening is an outdoor eatery. You know, so diurnal metamorphosis, early morning to late night. There's a small video, but I think we need to be a little smarter on time. So I'll leave it to your imagination and welcome to invite you in the place to experience it firsthand over there. So that was the socio-cultural appropriateness. The third part is the lessons we learned about this sustainability in the sense that we know that what way environmental management, etc. And these all re's, you can keep adding this crossword to add many more re's, but refuse, reduce, recycle, regenerate, restore, etc. We know that building industry accounts for 42% of energy consumption, and equally high amount of consumption of resources, as well as waste and pollutants that we create. So the first, humility rhymes with sustainability. So I think it's about shedding ego meaning preconceived ideas. And this is in the context of Ahmedabad, where I left a few days ago. It was 45 degrees Celsius. So I don't know how to convert, but I'm sure it's more than, I don't know, 100 something. But the point is, this is a south-facing facade of a building, and doesn't matter what kind of a glass that you might use, which is forbiddingly expensive. There's been a recorded 3-degree warmer temperature of a footpath outside by the reflected glare that comes out of it. And, I don't know, you can see the name. Earlier, even when I used to pass by, the name of this building is Mayflower and Sunflower. And I thought that this was a kind of a biscuit factory, and, they might be directly using this as a furnace, and, but it turned out to be a maternity home. And I probably, in India, we produce babies faster than biscuits, so maybe it's sort of justified somewhere there. And this is close to my house, where the western facade has, this slummy veil has retained for decades. They may repainted the house but not removed, because the direct sun that comes in. And here my suspicion always has been the person is in coma since the first electricity bill that he received, This where our wisdom, that thick wall for insulation, both in hot and cold kind of seasons, multi-tiered roof. Ventilation is equally important in our context as insulation, because all of us, we might consider ourselves cool, but we are all emitting 75 kilowatt energy, and this all heat outside. So we have to evacuate that. So the idea of ventilation by these clear story windows, so the cool air or hot air rises up. Outdoor living, so terraces also as living spaces, and fenestration type called jali, mashravias. And fantastic one that it's aesthetic element. It's also Venturi effect, that when breeze passes through a small aperture, it picks up velocity, and then with the courtyard, it evacuates out. So there's a whole flushing of the heat out there. Even Bernoulli's principle, like is warm, is cool. Like compressor, it compresses the air and release, and it becomes micro-cool. So it's scientific as well. And the whole wisdom of 3-part window, the top one is ventilator, middle one for view. Window word comes from Vindroga, eye of the window, and has 3 functions: light, view, and ventilation. And if you can, like Thali, I keep repeating, to allow for permutation and combination for any time of the day or year, for any activity, for any notion of privacy, or, you could permute and combine. So this is what it gave you, that multiple choice of when to allow what. In India, we need Ray-Bans, sky component is so high. And then who gave us license to have doubly loaded corridor that May afternoon also you have to use electricity? So these were all the versions of diffusing the light. I'll skip this. Water was another component. I'll run this for a while. This is one of the ways in which water was harvested but integrated into architecture, not as a plumbing or service plan, but citing to detailing. This palace is called, in a hot dry climate, a ship palace, where the entire region's catchment of water is channelized into this arrival pond. So it's been put to its aesthetic reception kind of a function. Once manually lifted up, the water by gravity runs through these channels into very beautiful 3-dimensional floor aesthetic element. It goes gargles, there's sound, evaporation of water gives the microclimate comfort. This is for king and queen at the upper level. And it's a nice puzzle with a running water. So it's a 3D floor inlay, so to say. that comes into the upper level hammam where kings and queen would have romance perhaps. Then it goes into the lower level area where the courtiers would be, and that would be the royal sort of area for the meetings, etc. And then by gravity runs through fountain, and then the what we call Mughal chadar, the inclined serration of the stones. So it goes gargling, sparkling over that, and then gets eventually collected. And this is the video we did where it is still functioning. Of course, it was not a rain, we had to put a tube. But, and then finally comes into a lower level pond. So no drop of water is wasted, but has been integrated spatially, aesthetically, environmentally, and functionally. Outdoor spaces, we've forgotten that art, that even we could use outdoors. Some years ago, we used to sleep on the terrace. And look at this, that this is traditional houses of the city of Ahmedabad, which I come from. And as I said, it has 2.7 FSI, FAR, whatever you call it here. So you don't have to go high rise, and you still could build as much of density in 4 to 5 story building. And the kind of common sense, deep long houses, so most of the areas are shared by the neighbor, and therefore you reduce that exposure. And the vertically projecting profile, so when sun is overhead, the whole facade is in the shade, and when it goes low, the next building starts shading it. So the first, through the architecture of the building, get the shading, and then multiple use of space from morning to afternoon to evening. So again, at a domestic level. So it's vital at any point in time. The architecture of courtyard, one of my books is Courtyard Houses of India, recently published. And each courtyard had its own water harvesting tank. So each house was self-sufficient, good enough, even in not so rainy season or area, to have adequate water for entire year's drinking and cooking needs. And now look at the, this was the IKEA then, that permutation and combination. One craftsman would have n number of bracket, column, etc. And like thali, you make your own composition. So each house was unique, quite beautiful. And yet you had your identity. So identity within conformity. So these are some of the houses still there, and they don't not necessarily need air conditioner for the climate comfort, and yet they are most beautiful to envy its use. And even the accessories, design of furniture. This is a swing. So in a hot, dry climate, what fan does with electric power is what you do with a muscle power. So you evaporate, and this helps you cool, and that makes it more comfortable. And this, I'm sure you all have, whenever gone, experience, and you say spicy food, but that also, I think, that helps you do the same, that you sweat, you cool yourself through the chilies that you do. So chilies work for AC in that sense, So now with that as the kind of understanding that we grew up with, or we kind of tried to interpret, I'll just very quickly run through, so I don't sound like a preacher. I'll put myself on fire line to say what kind of approaches we have used. So the point is, it's not one formula that should be applied everywhere, but it's different approaches with the same concerns. So start with refuse, and this we did a very modest, maybe I shouldn't put even in my autobiography, but no, this changed the quality of life of lots of people in a slum area where 3 sides are shared with the neighbor, and it's a deep house, so last rooms are invariably too dark. And even in the daytime, they have to use electricity. And the top is a tin roof, so it's even dark as well as hot. So this was one non-government organization. They wanted their members' houses to be done something with. And we accidentally came up with this idea. Just we were there for survey, I saw the bulb sparkling, the bottle sparkling. But we eventually did this, a dormer window in a kind of a translucent fiber material, and that they could do it locally in the kind of a cottage industry. But the difference it made was that minimum of, in Indian context, 250 rupee a month saving per house, per family, per month. And minimum of 1500 rupee increase in the domestic economic activity, because now they could work for longer hours and their eye strains were less. So a small little design intervention. All these pictures are not with flesh, as you can see. And this actually won the citation for United Nations Habitat Award, the British Housing Foundation Award, just for being able to just do something for the quality of life of the people. So this was refused, that don't use electricity in the daytime. Then reuse. This was a kind of a defunct sort of a place where, Gandhi used to be the championing the cause of untouchability, and he says that it basically begins by you not cleaning yourself, and somebody else who cleans it, you call them untouchable. You should be doing yourself. And there was a group of people after him who invested into developing techniques by which people don't have to do scavenging. So this was what we turned into a toilet park, but then we became bolder to share his idea and change the mindset that every time in India we say toilet and the reflex is to shut the nose. So this is called Toilet Cafe, and you could choose your own seats as you like, feel comfortable. The shower panel is actually a light panel, and it's all reminders of the washroom. And we've been this is the fourth that we ended up doing in that series, It's not a showroom of toilets. It's you could actually consume. This is reuse again, and you might, of course, feel very disturbed. So were we. This is Corbusier's building. It should have been a monument, and one of the 4 Corbusier's building, we actually ended up restoring 3 out of 4. And this was the condition of it, and we restored it voluntarily and turned it into a permanent museum on city of Ahmedabad, which arguably was the first city museum, and done through participatory processes. Most of these we didn't pay for, people gifted, because again, even with money, unless you have the right objects, there's no museum. So this was another one. And it depicts the culture, craft, art, architecture of the city. This won me the first interior design award for that. The same thing we did with this. I don't have the dilapidated pictures, although it is still needing some repairs. But we did the same in 1997 for Corbusier's other building, and I set up this permanent museum, letting people know, because this was definitely up for sale. And we made the precedent and said you should rather keep it. But there's no heritage law. Till 99 years of the age of the building, it is not a heritage. So it's not by classification, it's by the age. And that's where this was meant to go, because the real estate value of this is much higher. That was its own culprit, So anyways, so we tried to bring this to at least let people know that what they are getting and who it is from, etc. So this was a quick one-room kind of an exhibit that we had put up. So again, reusing the building. And this was again about Ahmedabad, that, Sky, so restaurant which sort of rotates, revolving restaurant. And just to give the glimpse of the city, we set this up as well. So reuse now to reduce. This might be my picture. I hope that I can reduce so much on the way. So now coming to different scales of intervention or design. So this is from a sort of a installation, redevelopment, to now interiors, where you don't have control with envelope and many other things, and still common sense principles. This is an IT office, and I think we ended up doing 5 for them, and this won us the Immersion Cup Award for energy saving, where common sense principle: use daylight, when it's pleasant outside, open the window, give the people, maximum people, the aperture to window, rather than bosses taking the external envelope and inside becoming dark, nature inspired detailing, and even the indoor plantation for quality of air. And then this is the next extension and next extension like that. So that's other. Then redefine that. This is now coming to residents, individual residents. This has been published in various best 50 designs of India. Not that it is or not, but I'm just saying that something which was simple, commonsensical, could still derive into. So natural finishes, local material, a standalone building, microclimate through water and vegetation, natural palette of material indoors and outdoors, water harvesting and recycling indoor, the courtyard kind of readaptation of traditional element, overhangs, etc., with common sense done by the solar azimuth, so that first to begin with sun doesn't come in, cavity wall construction, deep-seated windows, lure type of windows, so you could still control the air and without getting the glare, microclimate through vegetation, no false ceiling, all this by modulation of the sections. So you get the right height what you need where, but no false ceiling to do so. This is a formal drawing room with the courtyard. This is a reinterpretation of courtyard. You don't want today monkeys and other things coming in, and yet you can bring light and ventilation. And no chimney in a very affording kind of a house. It's just the skylight which brings the nice wash of light and can evacuate the smoke and the heat out. The dynamics of light with the punctures in the sky, so as the sun moves, you get different reflections. And integrating craft, and this is something that India, we enjoy the luxury of having the craftsmen which are affordable. But if we don't give patronage through our design to them, this art would die or they would not engage into that. So this is one pledge we have in many of our works in different forms of craft, and even the technology is not denied. These are energy saving lamps and whatnot. From there to standalone building, this is saying reflect. I must remind, if she's not listening, this is what I practice every day at home. So standalone building where again each side is not the same. Even if the building is there, east, west, north, south is different, sun behaves differently, breeze behaves differently. So I won't explain the kind of logic of each, but from north side being and again an interactive puzzle, because they were the publishing house corporate office, to a south which is more extreme. So again the jali or mashrabiyas, as I said, in this form. And southwest we are in the opposition, that it's good for breeze but bad for sun. So therefore these vertical lures which allows for the breeze and yet cuts down on sun. So each form of this sort of direction emerges. Also another standalone building, but vegetation. So sort of vegetation doesn't need to be only on ground, and interactive ways in which. Now recycle. Ahmedabad city alone produces 3,500 metric tons of waste every day, and it's simply ending into a heap to an extent that 70 feet mound of the waste got created. We had no natural feature called mound, and this could go by as a hill station, but we wouldn't like to stay there. So anyways, so we invested ourselves, we did studies and came up with transformation of some of these domestic and municipal waste into building components like that. And we had volunteers. This is in the squatter settlement. So women of the settlement could work few hours and could earn livelihood, and all this was done. So starting with illegal thin micron bags which could be braided like a hairdo, and you could then make it as a rope and into more value added products, to a fly ash brick with 5% cement in that, waste residue brick from the dump fill site, which is cheaper and better. That was our benchmark, that just in the name of environmentally sustainable should not cost more, then it will defy the whole purpose of doing so. So the benchmark was that economically within the bracket, in fact a lot of these came cheaper, like this one on the left hand side was 50 paisa cheaper than the other brick and much stronger than that. And you see it's not been plaster. And plastic bottle, nobody gives you 5 cents for that, even with the high recycling sort of habit or tradition. So the old widows of the settlement sitting at home in the evening singing devotional song with thumb pressure, filled it with inert material, they earned some livelihood, and that became equivalent of a brick in the wall. Well, Ahmedabad is a dry city, but enough liquor bottles can be found. You just have to in Google look for police stations. And so we turned it into jali, beautiful western light that can glow and ignite inside. So serves both purposes. Same with the filler slab into the slab. Even digital waste. So actually we did 5 extensions to this, and each time we added a new palette of waste, became bolder and client became kinder. Even digital waste as a paneling here. This is a scrap which became an interactive door for a crash. Even, rag sandwiched FRP. So these are the outcomes. And again, oil tin container, which opens up and it becomes a paneling, lures, ventilators, Same way, second-hand material from the broken houses, and it becomes your resource. So somebody's waste, somebody's resource, same paver block and all. And that's where this is in the middle of one of the largest quarter settlements of Ahmedabad city. And we created this, which works as a school in the morning, afternoon, vocational training for young girls. So they are computer literate and get employment. Through the day, it works as a creche where the nannies from the neighborhood look after the kids when both parents go out for labor. So that's becoming a creche. And it's a social place, one of the most active place where all religion festivals are celebrated. The idea of reinterpret, this is now coming to a larger institute campus where common sense principle, cavity wall, right orientation, southwest taller and north is sunken in so that you can use cut and fill the soil to raise your ground without import or export of soil, multiple courtyard architecture, natural palette of material. This is a courtyard which is also harvesting pond. 2.2 million liter of water is harvested, no drop of water goes out. Interactive spaces, multiple choices. Even the terrace becomes an outdoor space, as I said, that we don't have to overbuild. And that also became earth burning for the kind of hot area, giving natural insulation by passive cooling. The water system, multiple use of space. Outdoors is also a very comfortable space as long as you have shade. And this was a simple idea of vertically projecting profile, which we learned from traditional Havelis and houses with a insulated double wall ideas, cavity wall, art integrated to give inspiration. And this was zero planting. It is all done along the development. In fact, the first planting was done before the foundation of the brick so that it grows by the time things come up. This is again using local furniture, traditional ways of sitting around, Gurukul system, the integration of craft and beautiful craft, mud and mirror from different region. Left is Jaipur, Rajasthan, right is the west of Gujarat. So each region's even subtle variations that come about multiple use of space and nature integrated, and this has also grown over time. Then coming to the settlement, this is the unfortunate disaster we had in 2001 with several people died, etc. And we engaged for 18 villages rehabilitation, and we did it in participatory manner because it was an overnight, the system was disrupted. So, but we found people had the self-esteem and they were doing or surviving there in a very dignified way. This is the kind of vernacular architecture that they created where culture, craft and architecture could so get intertwined and reflecting on one another. And this was the revelation or the kind of humbling experience that while same place, same impact, the upper one on the right, newer construction gave way. This traditional bank would not give you any mortgage money on this kind of a definition of a non-permanent house, and yet nothing happened to this. The one above, you can say this was fluke 1, this is fluke 2, many flukes to be flukes, and there were enough scientific reasons. I won't get into the technicalities, but right from its form to burning detail to whatever, it was scientific because people would have experience. It's like in Japan, we hear the earthquake, but no casualty, because over time they have perfected that. So same thing here, even though tribals, but they have perfected that. But some of the things had to be shifted. So to my right is a sponsor, to my left is the whole village. I lost more hair, but I've maintained my pouch since then. And we did it in a participatory way, involve the people in all design decision making. So left hand side, we played an architect to which they kind of failed us and say, no, you must have bunk classes. We need something like that. Everybody's name was written. They chose their neighbors and the overall organization of the same. But that model would not give an idea of scale. So, but we took the model to the side to understand the orientation, but eventually put 4 corner pegs so that they know that, okay, if that is our side, then it's fine. And that's where when we started with theodolite transferring and marking those things, we found people had already started shifting their debris or home thing over there, which gave us two positive responses to us. One, their acceptance of what was happening, and second, the comprehension of what was happening. And both are important in rehabilitation site. This is the local soil, which is clay, which is what we actually select the site and dredged it further, which eventually will so become a water reservoir in the middle of desert. But that became the resource with just manually press ram, sun-dried bricks with the right plasticizers, etc. They are doing their own house, so that they do the best they can and as they want. Youngest of the family learned from the oldest, so the traditional wisdom is passed on to further generation. Like you see, this 12-year-old boy knows how to do this complicated roof. And we in fact recently even employed the new generation to a lot of some other projects, so they know this craft and it's become their livelihood. This is the initial phase where they just created the structure, but they didn't end at that. They decor this. Now, decor is a wrong word, it's a design, because when you have a harsh climate, apart from circular form, thick wall, you don't want big openings, because then the vagaries of weather would come in. So in that, there was small aperture, but small aperture should not mean the inside is dingy. So you have a white clay and mirror, so the least light that comes in gets largely reflected and makes it cheerful. So this is their way of life. This we again won a second United Nations Habitat citation for, and this is how they have picked up with craft, with the kind of culture maintained, and yet the newer facilities introduced. You will see a solar panel coming in, the smokeless stove, so that when they use the charcoal and those sort of thing in the stove, they inhale smoke and women have lung-related issues. So these are simple intermediate technologies that can improve the quality of life. As I said, from where the soil was dredged became a natural reservoir in the desert, and when there was water, on their own initiative, they started agriculture. So the whole ecology of the place changed, and when there's water, there's always culture that flourishes. You can see the smiles on faces. And because of the citation that we had won, we were asked to revisit after 10 years, because United Nations, there's a book, and one of that chapter we had to state the lessons learned. Even the failures were welcome to be noted. So some of these are much later pictures as well, and you can see that they've continued with their lifestyle, with the type of unit. And tradition is not anti-modernity. They could adapt to newer facilities, and yet for that they did not have to forego what they have always felt comfortable with. So this is the proof for us in India that now we say tradition and we think it's antiquity, once upon a time, but I think two can coexist, and that was our belief, and here at least these have at least proven right. And finally, the regenerate. This is a memorial for a Kerala Pharma, one of the industrial unit. And when the founder member died, we did just with 5 natural elements the space. It's 30 acres, but it's only land, water, vegetation. You will hardly find building. And just, we can have just a little music only to entertain. 2-minute video to just say, this is still an early picture. Now the trees have come much nicer. I won't get into the semantics and the design decision, but all of these are about usable plants. So edible landscape, actually spiritual and herbal landscape coming from pharmacy, learning from the idea of circumambulation in a temple, the idea of going around multiple spaces. This is same water that comes from factory, recycled and used, barrier-free design, and local stone and natural palette of material. This is from Bhagavad Gita. He died at the age of 87, and he was very ardent fan of Bhagavad Gita, so we use this. But these are simple messages of life, so it's not about religion, it's not about mythology, it's just what to do. Like one of the example, it says that you are only here to do your karma or do your duties, don't expect the fruit. Only when you expect the fruit and it doesn't happen, then you get disappointed and everything starts. So do your duty fruitlessly. So that's the kind of messages that comes in. It's a regressional journey from way outside the natural forest that we created to a semi-cured kind of a landscape that is inner ring, and the most geometric and man-made, to say that he made himself. So that's a kind of overarching idea with which this, and there's also, now his wife died and we extended this. The use of craftsmen, this craftsman got the highest civilian honor for doing the stone craft that he did. There are also a lot of meanings to all of these. They are not just decor, but I'll skip that for the time. And multiple kind of, by saying that I'm extending time. No, just on the last one. So that's a sign of a jungle that you can see, the forest. And this is drone view, not the 3D simulation. So I'll kind of end with this, and more so reminding ourselves and younger generation, glamour and beauty both may catch our attention, but glamour, like fashion, fades away in no time. We can see that now palazzos and the ball bottoms are coming. And as a student 40 years ago, I have one 44-inch flare. So my son cannot tell me that, Dad, you are outdated, It's just that it doesn't fit me here. Otherwise, I would be very fashionable. So one is applique, one is integral, one is temporal, one is timeless. So this is a little dialogue between grandpa and grandson. Grandson asks, Grandpa, how old are you? And grandson replies, Son, I was born before television, penicillin, polio shots, frozen food, Xerox, contact lenses, frisbees, credit card, laser beams, ballpoint pens, pantyhose, air conditioners, dishwashers, and man hadn't yet walked onto the moon. Your grandmother and I got married first and then lived together. Every family had a father and a mother. We were before computer dating, dual carriers, daycare centers, and group therapy. Our lives were governed by 10 commandments, good judgment, and common sense. Serving your country was a privilege, and living in the country, even bigger pride. We thought fast food was what people ate during the Lent or fasting days. We never heard of FM radios, tape decks, CDs, typewriters, yogurts, or guys wearing earrings. We listened to the news and president's speeches on our radios. Pizza Hut, McDonald's, and instant coffee were unheard of. We have pizza tonight. In my day, Coke was a cold drink, pot was something your mother cooked in, rock music was grandmother's lullaby, aides were helpers in principal's office, cheap meant a piece of wood, hardware was found in a hardware store, and software wasn't even a word. And we were the last generation to actually believe that lady needed a husband to have a baby. No wonder people call us old and confused and say there is a generation gap. And how old do you think I am? We don't have a younger crowd to ask that question. But we all know that 70 years has not changed our human DNA, or none of those evolutionary cycle has brought us to anywhere to anywhere. What has changed are the physical tools and manifestations. So let's not fool ourselves that 100 years apart, we are that really different, All that has changed is the instrument in the hand. Further down, what has changed? Maybe the fashion, you see. We had to push child in to go and study. Now we have to throw him out to go and play, Yes, the fashion changes. I'm fashionable, perhaps. We used to chain a dog, now we chain ourselves. There was a technology that united the world together on a dining table with a landline, and now on the same dining table we are divided in all over the world. So the point is technology with a human face. This is not to say that turning the clock backward by looking at the wisdom that has been there for several thousand years, but to take it further. Don't reinvent the alphabet all over again. Start with Z and go further to beta, gamma, whatever. And that's what I think in India people have been doing on their own. As architects, we can learn to be as humble. We had our own WhatsApps, our own CCTVs, and our own surfing. So I say, at least to my Indian counterparts, that we can definitely empower through design. The goal has to be to improve the quality of life. And in our context, I would say that rather than giving Gandhian currency the value, let's make Gandhian value itself as the currency. with the repository of several thousand years of wisdom, for us, the mantras can be inspired by yesterday and aspire for tomorrow. Welcome to traverse in the immensity of time and space, of notion and reality. Thank you for your kind attention and giving me that platform. Thank you. There's some books at the back. I couldn't carry more, but whatever, few. Please, sir.
I'm interested in the context of how you work with the community stakeholders and other parties, in the sense that did you use the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as part of the conversation? I know you mentioned habitat.
Yes. No, not really that formal way, but yes, the question is very valid. We often work with the NGO, non-government organization, which have a good rapport with the community. So you get the entry, and then you can do your kind of technical bit or the observational thing. So, I mean, not to make it sound bigger, but as a practice, we think we do research first and then kind of apply ourselves to that. So, for example, most of the research also came out of the projects, you know, so it was not a specially designed research, but looking at the community, it was not a mandate. So when we did the post-earthquake rehabilitation, I showed you one, but there are 18 villages and they don't look the same, or they're not with the same material either. Because as the community changes, some were farmers and they say, we don't know how to make the houses even, you know. So there the technique is different, the material, they were closer to some mountains and the stone was more appropriate. So the point is that you at least be there. We stayed there for 5 days and come back in the weekend or something like that. So we got the pulse of the place, we could build a rapport. But yes, there was social engineering done by the NGOs and that gave us a little accessibility better. And it was a camel and Arab story, at least for the earthquake ones. Initially, we used to sleep outside of their house on the tent or bus, and later on they said, you come, they gave their houses and they slept outside. So we managed to win over those houses. But no, that was the point of being able to first grasp what is right. That's why I say it's like a doctor, that he sees your physique, he sort of asks for your history, and then gives what is appropriate. So I think that's an obligation. To what extent, what demands is where. For example, we did 3 years of theoretical research with 9 volumes of study like that before we came to actually, luckily, be given this assignment. We told the client for this recycled waste material one, that was an NGO, and some of these had been pro bono. So we were able to, you know, kind of get our way, saying, and they only said that don't make us guinea pig. And that's why for everything we got the certification, but we tried things before and we even understood what really is a waste. Not everything thrown may be a waste, because there's a better application than the building that it might be more suited to. So we tried to understand, analyze that. So most of them went through a pilot study before, and often working with NGO gave us a little higher accessibility and understanding and rapport with the community.
Are there any other questions? Any other questions?
Please, two. Yeah. There one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is it on? Oh, so hi. Just I have a question about temperature and room temperature specifically. So I remember reading a great little book called Thermal Delight in Architecture, and one of the things that struck me the most in it was discussion of room temperature. So I know my mom, she grew up in Sweden. She said when she was younger, room temperature was 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And that in this book, they were talking about how in England, for example, room temperature could be in the 60s as comfort. And in parts of India, it could be up to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. But that's considered comfortable. But internationally, 72 degrees is considered room temperature. But the point of it was that people in India could work in an office, for example, at a higher temperature and be comfortable. But I'm curious, have you designed any buildings or worked on any projects which have been for kind of
Colder climates?
well, I guess for, you know, let's say, a bank, or for people who are on computers all day, kind of in an office, which maybe people are used to or expect kind of a nice, cool climate.
The interior design project that I showed you was for an international IT company. And in fact, we ended up doing 5 different extensions or different places design. So what I'm saying is that I'm not trying to put it in a louder way, but these are concepts, principles. So for example, insulation of the wall works as much for the cold climate as much for the hot climate. But the ventilation part may have to be opposite. Here, to keeping the warmth inside is the norm, and therefore insulation works better. For us, ventilation works because everything heats up and you must evacuate that. So I think it's working on those principles you can adapt. But the start point is that first thing first. So whether first is a lifestyle. For example, why should you work 2:30 in May afternoon when it's scorching sun? As I said, I don't know conversion in Fahrenheit, but 47 degrees. And when you were asking room temperature, these are desert climate and it even goes up to 52 degrees. But by natural, this thing inside is up to 35. Then of course you can have fan to make it comfortable, as I said, with the chemistry with your own body, that you evaporate, perspire, then it evaporates, and then it feels comfort. It's not in the thermometer it would ever show that comfort, but it is to the chemistry with the body, and that's why breeze helps. That's why wind is another factor, and many software initially used to fail on that count. They never counted the role of a wind in comfort even, So point is that a lot of these are principles which can be applied, so that actually that Immersion Cup award came for 50, they calculated. We didn't calculate anything. It was common sense principle for us. But for them, they had to do that. And there they found that 50. And my being a good, as I said, miser fellow from Ahmedabad, I always look at the electricity bill. And electricity bill, the accountant said, has gone half. So those are the kind of indicators which actually in place. Same way as I said for the slum people, that they could actually save 250 rupee on an average minimum per house per day. So, and that was the convincing point also, like the gentleman was asking that how do you bring that kind of communication across. So we tried in some, we showed the result, or the people themselves said that, yeah, by putting this, we were able to reduce it to so much. So 1 year it was monitored to know that what is the kind of difference, same June before and same June after, and likewise. So that's how, these are the indicators for way of approaching, each place wants to have its own strategy. But several places in India even, they're hot through the day or summer, but they're equally cold in winter, like Delhi or Jaipur and whatnot. And similar principles have been applied there. Okay, so in fact, with this diurnal variation, even Ahmedabad, which I talk of when it was 45 or 47, sometimes daytime temperature is still about 28 or 26. So you still have 19-degree day and night temperature variation. That doesn't mean it's cool, but what I mean is that the strategies do help when to open the window and when not to open the window. I like to work in a non-AC area. Even my youngest trainees do have AC, but I work without AC. So still, it is not uncomfortable. My computer is not drenched with sweat. So there are ways by which principles can be applied, but in a total system, not one formula, not one point somewhere and two equations another place. So I think when you make it happen like that, it does help. Roof insulation is one of the major things, and traditionally in hot climate and cold climate, like Rajasthan, as I say, they used to have the, the earthen kind of a, sorry? Yeah, the bowls or whatnot that you put upside down and then have a brick wet thing with a lime plaster on it. And that naturally gives you the good insulation from outside to in. The pot that you cook in are the reversed and put in, so they're hollow likewise. So based on what that place and context is, there are, but I think what I was sharing was generic principles and showing that there are diverse approaches. It's not just one way of finding that answer in every place.
Thank you, Yatin. That was a great presentation. Very informative. Appreciate that. And I'm wondering, could you tell us about how your practice is actually structured?
Okay.
Like, do you have, you're all located out of one location? Do you have like a standard group of people that are working with you? Like, how do you spread out, have satellite offices? How
All
does-
right, let me disappoint you. We have a very small office. We work with about 15 on an average people in the office. That also includes the architectural apprentices. One of my students gave me a title that it's a design Robin Hood. So many of these projects are pro bono, but sometimes you come across some clients who can make up for that. So I don't have Mercedes-Benz, but I still have a four-wheeler to drive. So actually it's kind of your own personal choice. So we are able to do, and that's why we have kept overheads very low. For example, I don't have any secretary. I do my bookings myself. I don't have any peon in the that's for an Indian context is very strange. But if you come, all trainees, we have developed a work culture that apprentice would, without me saying anything, on his own or her own, bring you the water, or I'll bring it myself. So there's no chauffeur. So we cut down on those overheads, and mine is a home office, and upstairs is an office, downstairs is my home. So by that, we are able to do this leverage that you don't have to count for every project, not do it for money or survival. Do it for your own joy and reason. And other way around, find joy in everything what you do. In fact, most of the awards I won was for the pro bono projects because you could try everything, and client also trusted you that he doesn't have wasted interest, is not charging, so maybe it's something that, and you also get a little upper hand to be able to, kind of convince them of that. So it does manage to balance things out, but yes, that's our choice.
Yatin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really fascinating, and as Eric said, really informative. So thank you so much. But let's continue the conversation around the corner in the gallery space. There's some food and drink there. So thank you.
Thank you.